Sarah Martinez had been working at St. Mary's General Hospital for exactly 3 months and 12 days when everything changed. The young nurse was finishing her night shift, exhausted from dealing with demanding patients and an understaffed emergency room. Her supervisor had already criticized her twice that week for being too slow with patient care, and Sarah was beginning to question whether she was cut out for this profession. The emergency room doors burst open at 2:47 a.m. with a crash that echoed through the quiet hospital corridors. 2 men in dark clothing rushed in, carrying a third man between them. Sarah looked up from the medication chart she was reviewing and immediately noticed something unusual about the scene. The injured man was unconscious, his face pale and covered in sweat. But his companions moved with military precision that seemed out of place in a civilian hospital. "We need help right now," the taller man demanded, his voice carrying an authority that made Sarah straighten up instinctively. "He's been poisoned. We think it's some kind of nerve agent." Dr. Williams, the attending physician, was dealing with a car accident victim in Trauma Room 2. The other nurses were busy with their own patients, and Sarah found herself being the first medical professional to respond. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached the group, but her training kicked in automatically. "Bring him to Trauma Room 1, she instructed, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. "What kind of symptoms has he been showing?" The shorter man, who had been silent until now, spoke with urgency. "Severe muscle spasms started about 20 minutes ago. His breathing became labored, and he lost consciousness 5 minutes before we arrived here. We don't have much time." As they moved the patient to the trauma room, Sarah caught a glimpse of something that made her heart skip a beat. Pinned to the unconscious man's jacket was a small insignia that she recognized from her brother's military service photos. The eagle and anchor of a Navy SEAL. But this wasn't just any SEAL insignia. The additional stars and detailing indicated this man held an extremely high rank. Sarah immediately began checking the patient's vital signs while calling for Dr. Williams over the intercom. The man's pulse was erratic, jumping between dangerously high and frighteningly low readings. His breathing was shallow and labored, and his skin had taken on a bluish tint that indicated severe oxygen deprivation. "His pupils are extremely dilated," she reported to the 2 men who had brought him in. "Can you tell me exactly what happened? Any information could save his life." The taller man hesitated, exchanging a meaningful look with his companion. "There was an incident at a secure facility. We believe he was exposed to a chemical agent, but we don't know exactly what kind. The symptoms started manifesting during transport." Sarah's mind raced through her pharmacology training. Chemical poisoning cases were rare in civilian hospitals, but she remembered studying various antidotes during her nursing program. The combination of symptoms, muscle spasms, respiratory distress, dilated pupils, pointed toward a specific class of toxins. Dr. Williams finally arrived, slightly out of breath from running across the hospital. "What do we have here?" he asked, immediately beginning his own examination of the patient. "Possible chemical poisoning," Sarah reported efficiently. "Symptoms include severe muscle spasms, respiratory distress, dilated pupils, and loss of consciousness. Based on the presentation, I believe we might be dealing with an organophosphate compound." Dr. Williams raised an eyebrow, impressed by Sarah's quick assessment. "Good thinking. Let's get blood work immediately and prepare atropine for administration. We'll also need pralidoxime, if your diagnosis is correct." As Sarah prepared the medications, she noticed that the 2 men who had brought the patient seemed unusually nervous about something beyond their friend's condition. They kept glancing toward the hospital entrance and checking their phones with increasing frequency. "Is there something else we should know?" Sarah asked, while drawing blood for the lab tests. "Any other symptoms or exposures we should be aware of?" The shorter man started to respond, but his companion cut him off with a sharp look. "Just focus on treating him. Time is critical." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. There was clearly more to this situation than a simple poisoning case, but her priority had to be saving the patient's life. She administered the atropine injection and immediately noticed a slight improvement in the man's breathing. "The medication is working," she reported to Dr. Williams, who was reviewing the preliminary blood test results on his tablet. His respiratory rate is stabilizing. Just as Sarah was beginning to feel hopeful about the patient's recovery, she heard something that made her blood run cold. The sound of multiple vehicles pulling up outside the hospital with the distinctive rumble of powerful engines. Through the trauma room window, she could see several black SUVs arranging themselves around the hospital entrance. The two men who had brought the patient exchanged alarmed looks. "They found us," the taller one muttered under his breath. "Who found you?" Sarah asked. But neither man answered. Instead, they moved toward the room's exit with obvious urgency. "We need to go," the shorter man said. "Take good care of him. His name is Admiral James Morrison, and he's more important than you can possibly imagine." Before Sarah could ask any more questions, both men had disappeared into the hospital corridors, leaving her alone with the unconscious Admiral and Dr. Williams, who was too focused on the medical charts to notice the dramatic exit. Sarah's mind was spinning with questions and concerns. An admiral had been poisoned. Mysterious men had dropped him off at her hospital. And now there were black SUVs surrounding the building. She looked down at Admiral Morrison, whose breathing was becoming more regular but who remained unconscious. "Dr. Williams," she said carefully, "I think we might have a bigger situation here than just a poisoning case." Before the doctor could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the hospital corridors. Someone was coming, and based on the urgency of those footsteps and the vehicles outside, Sarah had a feeling that her quiet night shift was about to become something much more complicated and dangerous. The Admiral stirred slightly on the bed, his eyelids fluttering as if he might regain consciousness. Sarah checked his pulse again and was relieved to find it much more stable than before. Whatever had been used to poison him, they had caught it in time. But as the footsteps grew closer, and she heard the unmistakable sound of multiple people moving through the hospital with military precision, Sarah realized that saving Admiral Morrison's life might have been the easy part. Now she had to figure out what kind of situation she had stumbled into and whether she was prepared to handle whatever was coming next. The trauma room door remained slightly ajar, and through it, Sarah could hear voices in the corridor, authoritative, urgent, and definitely not belonging to hospital staff. She moved closer to Admiral Morrison's bedside, instinctively feeling protective of her patient, regardless of who was coming to find him. Whatever happened next, Sarah knew that her life as a rookie nurse at a quiet general hospital had just taken a dramatic and potentially dangerous turn. The only question was whether she was ready for what was about to unfold. The footsteps stopped directly outside the trauma room door. Sarah held her breath, her hand instinctively moving to check Admiral Morrison's pulse one more time. His heartbeat was steady now, a reassuring rhythm under her fingertips, but his eyes remained closed. The door opened slowly, and a woman in a black suit stepped inside. She was tall, professional, with sharp eyes that immediately took in every detail of the room. Behind her, Sarah could see at least 3 other people in similar attire waiting in the hallway. "Nurse Martinez," the woman said, reading Sarah's name tag with obvious purpose. "I'm Agent Rebecca Chen with the Department of Defense. I need to speak with you about your patient." Sarah's heart was pounding, but she forced herself to remain calm. "I'm sorry, but patient confidentiality prevents me from discussing. This is a matter of national security," Agent Chen interrupted, stepping closer to the bed where Admiral Morrison lay. "The man you just treated is one of the highest-ranking officials in Naval Special Operations. His condition and the circumstances surrounding his arrival here are classified information." Dr. Williams looked up from his charts, confusion evident on his face. "What's going on here? This is a hospital, not a military base." Agent Chen turned her attention to the doctor. "Dr. Williams, you and Nurse Martinez have stumbled into something far beyond a typical medical emergency. Admiral Morrison was targeted for assassination tonight. The fact that he's alive right now is entirely due to your quick thinking and medical expertise." Sarah felt a chill run through her body. "Assassination? But who would want to? That's classified," Agent Chen said firmly. "What I can tell you is that Admiral Morrison has been working on a highly sensitive operation involving international security threats. There are people who would go to great lengths to ensure he never wakes up." As if responding to their conversation, Admiral Morrison stirred on the bed. His eyes slowly opened, unfocused at first. Then gradually becoming more alert, he tried to sit up, but Sarah gently pressed him back down. "Easy," she said softly. "You've been through a serious poisoning. Your body needs time to recover." Admiral Morrison's voice was hoarse when he spoke. Where am I? What happened to Stevens and Rodriguez?" Agent Chen moved closer to the bed. "Admiral, you're in Street Mary's General Hospital. Stevens and Rodriguez got you here safely, but they had to leave when our security perimeter was compromised. How much do you remember?" The Admiral closed his eyes, clearly struggling to piece together recent events. "The meeting. There was something wrong with the coffee. I remember feeling dizzy. Then everything went black." His eyes snapped open, suddenly alert. "The documents. Did they get the documents?" "We're still assessing the situation," Agent Chen replied carefully. "Right now, our priority is your safety and recovery." Sarah watched this exchange with growing concern. The fact that Admiral Morrison was conscious and coherent was medically encouraging. But the conversation was revealing just how dangerous the situation really was. Dr. Williams stepped forward. "Agent Chen, while I understand this is a serious matter, my patient needs continued medical observation. The antidotes we administered need to be monitored, and there could be delayed effects from the poisoning. I appreciate your concern, doctor, but we need to move the Admiral to a secure medical facility as soon as possible. Every minute he remains here puts both him and your hospital at risk." Admiral Morrison struggled to sit up again, and this time Sarah helped support him. "Agent Chen," he said, his voice growing stronger. "Before we go anywhere, I need to know, was the operation compromised? Are the other team members safe?" "Sir, we should discuss this after you've had more time to recover." "Answer the question," the Admiral said with authority that filled the small room. Agent Chen glanced around nervously. "There was a breach. We believe someone inside the operation leaked information about your location. 3 team members are unaccounted for, and the primary objective was not achieved." Sarah saw the Admiral's face darken with anger and concern. Despite his weakened condition, his military bearing was unmistakable. This was a man accustomed to command, to having answers, and to protecting his people. "How long was I unconscious?" Admiral Morrison asked. "About 45 minutes, Sarah replied. "From what your escorts told us, the symptoms started 20 minutes before you arrived here." The Admiral looked at Sarah with new interest. "You're the nurse who treated me?" "Yes, sir, along with Dr. Williams." "Then you saved my life," he said simply. "The poison they used is designed to be fatal within an hour. Without immediate treatment, I would be dead right now." Sarah felt a flush of pride mixed with the weight of responsibility. "I was just doing my job." "No," Admiral Morrison said firmly. "You did far more than that. You correctly diagnosed a rare chemical poisoning and administered the appropriate treatment under pressure. That kind of quick thinking and medical expertise isn't just doing a job, it's exceptional professional competence." Agent Chen was becoming visibly impatient. "Admiral, we really need to move. Our security assessment indicates that hostile forces may have tracked you to this location. The longer we stay, the greater the risk to everyone here." As if summoned by her words, the sound of helicopters could be heard approaching the hospital. The rhythmic thumping of rotors grew louder, and through the window, Sarah could see lights in the dark sky. "Are those your people?" Dr. Williams asked nervously. Agent Chen checked her communication device. "Negative. Our air support isn't scheduled to arrive for another 10 minutes. The tension in the room immediately escalated. Admiral Morrison attempted to stand, and despite Sarah's protests, managed to get to his feet with obvious effort. "We need to move now," he said, his military training overriding his physical weakness. "If those helicopters contain hostiles, this hospital is about to become a battlefield." Sarah looked around the trauma room, her mind racing. "There's a service elevator at the end of the corridor that goes directly to the basement parking garage. It's used for transporting supplies and isn't monitored by the main security system." Agent Chen nodded approvingly. "Good thinking. Admiral, can you walk?" "I'll manage," Admiral Morrison replied, though Sarah could see he was still unsteady on his feet. "Doctor." Williams grabbed a wheelchair from the corner of the room. "You're not walking anywhere in your condition. This is still a medical situation, regardless of whatever else is happening." As Admiral Morrison reluctantly sat in the wheelchair, Sarah quickly gathered the medications they had used to treat him. "He'll need continued monitoring for the next 12 hours. The antidotes can have side effects, and there might be delayed reactions to the original poison. Can you come with us?" Agent Chen asked suddenly. "Your medical expertise might be crucial, and you're already involved in this situation." Sarah stared at her in shock. "I can't just leave the hospital. I have other patients. Responsibilities." "Miss Martinez," Admiral Morrison said quietly. "I understand this is asking a lot. But Agent Chen is right. You know my case better than any other medical professional right now. And my condition is far from stable. I may need your help to survive the next few hours." The sound of the helicopters was getting closer, and through the window, Sarah could see that the black SUVs in the parking lot were beginning to move into defensive positions. Dr. Williams looked at Sarah with understanding. "Go," he said. "This is beyond anything we can handle here. I'll cover for you with the administration." Sarah felt as if her world was spinning out of control. 20 minutes ago, she had been a rookie nurse worried about keeping her job. Now she was being asked to leave the hospital with a poisoned admiral, while mysterious helicopters circled overhead and armed agents secured the building. But looking at Admiral Morrison, pale and clearly still affected by the poison, she realized that her medical oath demanded she prioritize his care above her own comfort and safety. "All right," she said, grabbing a medical bag from the supply cabinet. "But I want to know exactly what I'm getting myself into." Agent Chen was already moving toward the door. "I'll explain everything once we're somewhere safe. Right now, we need to get the Admiral out of here before those helicopters decide to land." As they prepared to leave the trauma room, Sarah took one last look around the space where she had spent countless hours learning to be a nurse. She had a feeling that after tonight, nothing in her life would ever be the same again. The service elevator descended slowly toward the basement parking garage, each floor marked by a soft ding that seemed unnaturally loud in the tense silence. Sarah stood beside Admiral Morrison's wheelchair, continuously monitoring his pulse and breathing, while Agent Chen spoke quietly into her communication device. "Package is mobile," Agent Chen whispered. "ETA to extraction point is 3 minutes. Be advised, unknown aircraft are circling the primary location." Admiral Morrison looked up at Sarah with eyes that were much clearer than they had been 20 minutes earlier. "How are you holding up, Nurse Martinez? This probably isn't what you expected when you came to work tonight." Sarah managed a nervous smile. "Definitely not covered in nursing school. But your vital signs are stable, which is what matters right now." The elevator came to a stop, and Agent Chen cautiously opened the door. The basement parking garage was dimly lit, with concrete pillars casting long shadows between the parked cars. Sarah could hear the distant sound of helicopters, but they seemed to be maintaining their position above the hospital rather than landing. "There," Agent Chen pointed toward a black sedan parked near the emergency exit. "That's our ride." They moved quickly across the garage, with Sarah pushing the wheelchair while Agent Chen maintained a protective position beside them. As they approached the car, Sarah noticed 2 more agents emerge from behind nearby vehicles, creating a security perimeter. "Admiral Morrison," one of the new agents reported, "we've confirmed that the helicopters above are not friendly. They appear to be conducting surveillance rather than preparing for an assault. But we need to assume they're tracking your location." Admiral Morrison nodded grimly. "What about the rest of my team?" "Stevens and Rodriguez made it to the safe house. Lieutenant Commander Walsh and Petty Officer Jackson are still missing, but we're working on locating them." As they helped Admiral Morrison into the back seat of the sedan, Sarah noticed his hands were shaking slightly. She immediately checked his pulse again and found it elevated. "Agent Chen," she said urgently. "He's showing signs of stress-induced complications from the poisoning. We need to get him to proper medical facilities immediately." "Where are we going?" Admiral Morrison asked as Sarah climbed into the seat beside him. Agent Chen started the engine. There's a military medical facility about 20 minutes from here. They're equipped to handle chemical poisoning cases, and they have the security clearance for this situation. As they drove out of the parking garage, Sarah looked back to see the helicopters still circling above the hospital. The sight made her realize just how serious the threat against Admiral Morrison really was. "Can you tell me what happened tonight?" Sarah asked the Admiral, as she continued monitoring his condition. "I mean, what you're comfortable sharing." Admiral Morrison was quiet for a moment, clearly weighing his words carefully. "There's an international smuggling operation that we've been tracking for months. Tonight was supposed to be a meeting with an informant who claimed to have critical information about their next operation. But it was a trap," Agent Chen added from the driver's seat. "Obviously," the Admiral replied. "The question is how they knew about the meeting. The location was changed 3 times, and only 4 people knew the final details." Sarah felt a chill as the implications sank in. "You think someone on your own team betrayed you? It's the only explanation that makes sense," Admiral Morrison said sadly. "Someone with high-level access fed information to our enemies. They knew exactly where I would be and what I would be drinking." "What kind of poison did they use?" Sarah asked, her medical curiosity overriding her fear. "Based on the symptoms and the antidotes that worked, it was likely a modified organophosphate compound," Admiral Morrison replied. "Probably something developed specifically for assassination purposes. Without your quick diagnosis and treatment, the dosage they used would have killed me within the hour." Agent Chen took a sharp turn, and Sarah noticed they were entering a heavily secured area. Guard posts and fences indicated they were approaching the military medical facility. "Admiral," Agent Chen said, "once we get you inside, you'll be debriefed by intelligence officers. They'll want to know everything you remember about tonight, no matter how insignificant it might seem." "And what about Miss Martinez?" Admiral Morrison asked. "She's been thrust into a situation that could put her in danger." Sarah looked between them, suddenly realizing that her involvement in this incident might have consequences she hadn't considered. "What kind of danger?" Agent Chen parked the car outside a building that looked more like a fortress than a hospital. "The people who tried to kill Admiral Morrison tonight are part of an international organization with significant resources. They don't leave loose ends." "Meaning what, exactly?" Sarah demanded. Admiral Morrison turned to face her directly. "Meaning that by saving my life, you may have made yourself a target. These people will want to know how much you know and whether you pose a threat to their operations." Sarah felt the weight of the situation settling on her shoulders. "But I don't know anything. I'm just a nurse who happened to be working when you arrived." "Unfortunately, they don't know that," Agent Chen said as she helped Admiral Morrison out of the car, "which is why we're offering you protective custody until this situation is resolved." As they entered the medical facility, Sarah was struck by the contrast with her civilian hospital. Everything here was designed with security in mind. Reinforced walls, multiple checkpoints, and personnel who carried themselves with military bearing. A doctor in naval uniform met them at the entrance. "Admiral Morrison, I'm Commander Sarah Phillips. We've been briefed on your condition. How are you feeling?" "Better than I was an hour ago, thanks to this young lady," Admiral Morrison replied, indicating Sarah. She correctly diagnosed organophosphate poisoning and administered the appropriate treatment under considerable pressure. Commander Phillips looked at Sarah with new respect. "Impressive work. We'll want to run additional tests to ensure there are no lingering effects from the poison. But your initial treatment probably saved his life." As they moved toward a treatment room, Admiral Morrison stopped and turned to Sarah. "Miss Martinez, I need you to understand something. What happened tonight is part of something much larger than a simple assassination attempt. The operation I was investigating involves weapons smuggling that could threaten national security." "What does that have to do with me?" Sarah asked. "The people behind this will stop at nothing to protect their interests. By becoming involved in my rescue, you've demonstrated capabilities that make you valuable and potentially dangerous to them." Agent Chen stepped forward. "Which is why we're prepared to offer you a position with our medical team. Your quick thinking and medical expertise under pressure are exactly what we need for operations like this." Sarah stared at them in disbelief. "Are you offering me a job?" "We're offering you a chance to make a real difference. Admiral Morrison said. And to do it with the protection and resources of the Department of Defense behind you. Commander Phillips began her examination of Admiral Morrison, while Sarah processed this unexpected turn of events. Her life as a struggling rookie nurse at a civilian hospital seemed very far away. "I need time to think about this," Sarah said finally. "Of course," Admiral Morrison replied. "But while you're thinking, remember that you've already proven you have the courage and competence to handle situations that most people never face. Tonight, under pressure, and with incomplete information, you saved a life and potentially prevented a significant threat to national security." As Commander Phillips worked to complete Admiral Morrison's treatment, Sarah realized that the events of this night had changed her in ways she was only beginning to understand. She had discovered capabilities within herself that she never knew existed, and she had been thrust into a world where her medical skills could have implications far beyond individual patient care. The helicopters had disappeared from the sky outside, but Sarah knew that the danger Admiral Morrison faced was far from over. And whether she accepted their offer or returned to her civilian life, she would always carry the knowledge of this night. The night when a rookie nurse's quick thinking had prevented an assassination and uncovered a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of military operations. Looking at Admiral Morrison, who was already planning his next moves despite his recent brush with death, Sarah realized she had a choice to make. She could return to the safety and predictability of civilian nursing, or she could step into a world where her medical expertise could help protect people who put their lives on the line for national security. Either way, she knew that she would never again be just a rookie nurse who questioned whether she was cut out for the profession. Tonight had proven that when it mattered most, she had exactly what it took to save lives under the most extreme circumstances imaginable.